Hey everyone! Before we open today's file, please make sure to follow us on Instagram at d.s.radio, where you can find all the images that go along with today's case. You can drop us an email at contact.dsradio@gmail.com. You can find all of our socials in the Linktree bio on our Instagram profile, including links to merch. If you're feeling especially generous, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/dystopian simulation radio, where you can get access to our exclusive Instagram page and make suggestions for upcoming episode topics that you would like us to cover. Speaking of Patreon, thanks to our Patreons, Riff Cult, Cropley Crab, Cash Broadus, Raspberry Jr., Jason R. Nelson, Creepy Paper, Jamie Sook, Michael Laughlin, Lindsay Keller, Mike Wright, Greer Weaver, Kelsey Carruthers, Linz Gibbon, Drake Holvig, Only Child, Michael M, Wesley Akers, Riaz K, Emily Medeiros, Pip, Heather Wynn, Graves, Devon Sweatshirt, The Ordained Sinister Minister, and Philip Hoffman.
Hello everybody, we are back and this is Dystopian Simulation Radio. Linz, it's been a while.
It's been a while. A lot has happened. We've both been out of England. We lost a queen.
We did, I can't believe it. We both left the country for a minute.
Yeah.
And now she's missing.
Yeah, like I came back and it started pouring down with rain for days and the queen died. So I think I'm some kind of like bad omen.
I mean, I've thought that for quite a while, to be honest. But...
How dare you? I knew you were going to say something like that, you dick.
But yeah, shit. I suppose we better make the announcement.
The announcement?
Ladies and gentlemen, the Queen is dead.
Oh, I wanted to laugh, but then it felt kind of sad at the same time because it's like just an old lady, really, isn't it?
Is it?
Well,
or is it a reptilian?
I knew you were going to say the worst part of it all was, like, as soon as, well, not the worst part, I'm sure it's worse for others, but as soon as I saw the news, I was just thinking, like, is there going to be reptilian conspiracy theories all over the place now? Is that what Chris is going to say when we talk about the death of the Queen? And yes.
Well, we are back. There has been a little bit of a break because of international travelling, and also just because I've been wrangling a 6-month-old, which has been a challenge, but we'll get over it.
Yeah, we're working through it. We also had the cursed mic issues again today, so we're starting like an hour and a half later than we were supposed to. So we're getting through it, everyone. We're trying to do this.
We're doing it, man. Like, yeah. it wouldn't be a recording session for us if we didn't have at least one near implosion of a microphone.
I thought you were going to say near-death experience. I was like, sometimes it feels that way.
True. But anyway, if it's been a little while since you've listened to us, then just a reminder that we do have an Instagram account, which is...
d.s.radio.
Exactly, and that's where you'll be able to find any images associated with this episode and past episodes as well. And it's where you can leave a comment, leave some feedback, and just let us know what you think about the topic of whatever the episode is going to be about. And we also have a Patreon.
Yeah, that's patreon.com/dystopian simulation radio. And Chris and I will be doing, well, we plan to do some Patreon exclusive Ouija board sessions for spooky season. So
it's always spooky season.
It's always spooky season where we live. Of course, we are talking about Halloween.
Halloween. Yes. Halloween.
So, Chris,
Yes.
now that we've got all of the handles out of the way, you have a story for me today.
I do. Just before we go into that, actually, one thing we probably need to talk about is just that for the next foreseeable future, we'll be every other week, but we'll be releasing an episode. We just need to catch up on things. And, we've been fighting really hard against the tide of various things that have happened, trying to be weekly, trying to get as much out as possible. But ultimately, what we want to do is put quality out, not quantity. So I think, taking a step back for a little bit will just help us to ultimately deliver more to you in the future.
We're basically doing what we started out doing, which is an episode every other Monday. And I've actually been going out into the field recently because, like Chris said, we want to put out some good quality episodes. So look forward to my next episode. I'll have some very strange content for you that I experienced in real life. So yeah, we're going to put a lot more effort into each episode, and we're not going to dial it in just to do weekly ones. So look forward to some good quality shit coming your way.
Yeah. That's not to say that there might not be a weekly episode every so often, for a special episode or something like that, but the main flow going forward will be every other week.
I will say, now and again, I'm going to pop in with a little bonus episode for you all, so keep an eye out for that too.
And I might do the same if I ever don't have a screaming child next to my microphone. Shh, he's sleeping. So, Linz, a while back, it was my birthday, and you kindly provided me with a present. Do you remember what that was?
I do. I remember I missed your birthday. I was going through some stuff. I came round to your house. I laughed at a birthday card and said, "That's funny. Whose birthday was it?" And you said, "Mine." And I was like, "No." So I sent you a belated gift of, I think it was cryptid, illustrated cryptid. Was it trading cards or top trump cards or?
Top trump cards, yeah. And for anybody who might not be familiar, what are top trump cards?
Oh God, it's kind of like a card game where it'll be based on a topic, like, in this case, it's cryptid, so there'll be stats for, like, strength or, I don't know, how elusive they are. I don't know. You just basically battle card to card with your highest strengths. It's an old school kind of game, I guess.
I mean, I think the classic one was Cars. And
I had a zombies one.
Yeah, I mean, there's that as well. But you'd pick whatever of the stats that your car or zombie was highest rated in, and you'd be like horsepower 89 or brain eating 65.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is a sort of funny take on that. But these were cryptids from around the world, and they're based on things like alien encounters and various other things that came about. And I opened it up. I picked a random card out and I thought, I'm going to make an episode on that.
Ooh.
And you know what? It was fate. Because there, staring back at me on that card, was a case from the very Japanese island that I was in at the time. And where I used to live, Hokkaido. So this is a bizarre case that we're going to open today of the Kitami abductors. Now, Kitami is a large city and actually a sub-prefecture as well in the northeast of Hokkaido, Japan. Sub-prefecture essentially means that it's a large chunk of land that we're talking about here. So it's like a county, for want of a better term. So bear in mind that this story, although it takes place in Kitami, is not taking place in Kitami City, but in the more rural area surrounding the city. Now, I've been to Kitami. It's a lovely place. You can see drift ice there in the winter.
Actually, I always forget that, like, Hokkaido is a snowy, icy place. When I think of Japan, I'm like, oh, it's probably some warm city and there's probably a lovely view. But no, I always forget that people, like, ski there and stuff. Yeah,
I mean, you get feet of snow there in winter in Hokkaido. The north of Japan is very snowy, very cold. And, down south, there's not so much snow, and certainly down at the islands, down at the bottom, it's subtropical. But yeah, it's a very cold place, especially in winter. So it's lovely. I still have friends who live there in that area. And as you say, Hokkaido's in the north of Japan, and it's actually the same island that the Tomomai brown bear incident episode took place on. If you want to go,
it's a freaking cursed island, isn't it? Let's be honest. Like, everything you tell us about it, it's never good.
I'm trying to get a job in tourism for them, dude. Come on.
In like a dark tourism, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, and this is the place where a bear ate a child's head. Isn't that interesting, everyone? Now, if you come over to this drift ice, there's some abduction mutant here that will take your children in the night if they don't finish their ice.
Today's file occurred on April 6th, 1974, in the rural farming area of Kitami. Fujiwara Yoshihiro, who was a farmer in the area, was awoken at 3 a.m. by a dog barking and some banging at his genkan. Genkan are the entrance of Japanese homes. You could think of them as a porch, but if you've never seen one, they're quite unique. Think of an entranceway of your home, but directly after the front door. You've probably got a coat hook there or a shoe rack or something like that. If you're really fancy, maybe you've got an umbrella stand. This area in Japanese homes is sunken, so you take your shoes off there and then you step up into the home proper. And this separates the inside from the outside, and technically speaking, the genkan can be considered an outside part of the home, which means that traditionally people would enter into the genkan and call for the owner of the house versus sort of, knocking on the door. Now, in my half decade of living in Japan, nobody ever entered my genkan without asking. But I have heard stories of such. Now, people in Japan tend to leave their doors unlocked. This is part of the culture. It's relatively safe out there, especially in the rural areas. And this is important because when Yoshihiro heard that noise in the wee hours of April 6th, he didn't think anything of it. Yes, he thought it was unusual, but never considered for a moment that it could be something dangerous. Perhaps it was a neighbour, somebody in trouble, or some kids playing a joke from the local high school. Yoshi got out of bed, slid on a pair of slippers, and headed down the hall to the genkan, where he heard the noise again, but it was just outside the front door. Pulling it open, he expected to have a "I'll have your parents down here in a jiffy" moment. But it's hard to know whose parents to call when confronted with a 3-foot alien starfish that was later described as a cross between a human, a toad, a starfish, and an octopus.
Chris!
Well, who would you call? Except the Ghostbusters, maybe.
Starfish?
Starfish. So,
Okay.
much like all of our best subjects, Yoshi had an artistic streak in him. And
Thank God.
he drew this lovely picture of our diminutive alien. So, Linz, if you could check out the picture and please describe it to the lovely listeners.
I will. Okay. He's not great at drawing.
Oh, come on. Give him a break.
There's some nice outlines on it. So basically what we have is, I would say this looks like a 4-legged octopus with a dunce hat on it.
Yeah, you're not far off there.
So we've got like a sort of spirally thing on the top of the head. I can't tell if that's a head or a hat. But I'm sure you can read the Japanese here. But it's an octopus with 4 legs, and they're really like, it's as if he's stretching. They're really straight. So kind of like a starfish. It's like Patrick from SpongeBob with but like a simplified, you know how like companies have been really like simplifying their logos to like nothing. It's kind of like someone did that to Patrick and put a funny hat on him.
Yeah, you're not too wrong there, actually.
Yeah.
From what I understand of this, you've got this starfish octopus alien being inside a sort of plastic suit that's keeping it all contained.
Oh, that is a suit.
So that's
I did not get that part from the drawing.
So that's like a vinyl suit that's like surrounding the alien.
With a large hood.
Yeah, presumably to keep all its wibbly bits inside. And the being is covered in scales or sort of spots that kind of resemble like a toad if you look at one up close.
Huh.
not that toads have scales, but, they've got that sort of pattern to their skin.
He has put texture on this drawing, but it looks like when you draw cartoon hairs on a man's chest, but really, really condensed and close together.
And they do have a quite menacing expression on their face as well, especially the one on the right.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so the one on the right, he's kind of redrawn it. Maybe he redrew that later, or maybe that was the first one. But he has a sort of a beak-like nose and a little evil smile, and his eyes are like pointing downwards in true angry cartoon style. That is so silly.
They had a sort of, according to the notes, that they're way too complex Japanese for me to read, that have been translated, are that it had a sort of large bulbous octopus-style head, pair of eyes, which were downward facing, and had a single nostril in the centre.
Now I'm getting the alien thing. So it's sort of like a grey in the head department.
Yeah.
And a little bit owly.
I love this design. And I'll get onto it a little bit later, but it's just so unique compared to anything else.
100%.
What this like wibbly thing is above its head, I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was like, when you see like drawings of UFOs and there's like force fields and things like that. It kind of looks like it's going like wheel. It's like some kind of antenna, but I don't know how literal this guy's drawing is, and if it has any sort of he's trying to like express anything else. But if it's literal, it's literally like a squished pasty on a stick on top of his head. If you want to interpret it in a different way, it looks like it's like signaling something. Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, perhaps this next part may clear it up. I'm not quite sure myself, but as Yoshi exited his home and was confronted with this giant wibbly octopus toad, the pair stopped and were seemingly as equally surprised by one another. The creature suddenly motioned upwards, and suddenly a large flash of white engulfed everything. Yoshi was propelled back into the house, and the door was slammed. Peeking through his window, he saw a roughly 26-foot disc land. An orange light emanated from it in all directions. Yoshi suddenly began to move, but not of his own free will. He was dragged across the floor before levitating into the air and out of a previously closed window. He was being levitated towards the craft, which he entered not by the door, but by passing through the wall of the disc before landing on a floor.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. An alien starfish octopus.
So you've got a classic sort of abduction here with the floating
classic,
and being taken out of the window. It's interesting that he didn't pass through, or rather he did pass through the wall of the disc versus going through a door.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, normally it's like you go up like a door in the bottom of the ship or something, up a tractor beam, but this is just like, no, I'm just passing through. Yeah. I'm not matter anymore.
or there's a little ramp that they walk up comically. So when he awoke, he noticed that the interior of the craft was bathed in blue, and some kind of writing lined the walls. And he would later describe it as a little like Japanese, but unreadable.
The Pokemon language from the games. That's what you're describing, Chris.
Maybe. I mean,
it's a premonition of Nintendo to come.
Could have been. I mean, these beings do look a little bit like Missing No. It could be. I think it's interesting that he thinks that it's a little bit like Japanese because obviously he's going to interpret what he knows as writing, as kanji, but different. Interesting. And apparently there was a foul odour in the air that pervaded the whole craft.
Stinky starfish. Nobody likes that.
Well, two of too many Limp Bizkit references to make.
Yeah.
So two of these stinky toad boys approached him, and he realised that they appeared to have an antenna emanating from the top of their heads. So
I told you. Yes.
That's what that is right there. And they spoke to him telepathically and said,
"No danger. We promise to release you close to your house."
Which is quite nice of him, really, isn't it? From there,
I don't know what a Japanese starfish toad boy would sound like. I think you can do a better one.
I don't think I could possibly improve on that. What would it? I mean, what does starfish? What noise do starfish make?
They don't. They just wiggle around creepily.
Well, toads make a brr.
Yes, please, you're onto something, Chris.
And in
No danger. Be promised to release you close to your house.
That's so good. Now do it in Japanese.
So from that, they proceeded to move towards him. And Yoshi, what do you think he did?
Probably went, ew, get away from me. Put me back home, you freaks.
Yeah, pretty much. He legged it in the opposite direction, dodging through the craft, and came across an open hatch. From there, he proceeded to shout, "Cannonball!" and jumped the hell out of Dodge.
There's always a hatch, see?
Exactly.
Always a hatch.
Now, he hit the ground, which he was about 10 foot away from at the time, which is nothing if you're Jeff Hardy, and he made a break for it. He half recognised where he was, and soon came across a friend's home. He was actually about 2 miles away from his own farm, and he knocked on the door. His friend let him in, or rather he entered the Genkan, I assume. His friend let him in, and they soon realised that he had lost a whole hour's worth of time since being awoken earlier on. Now, displacement of time is a classic sign of alien abduction, or a classic reported thing from an alien abduction, either time stopping or suddenly you find yourself much later than you believe it was.
Yeah, missing time. Classic.
Now, crucially as well, there was kind of a witness to this. Kind of. So a junior high school student was awoken by a light that was supposedly brighter than the moon shining through her window, and reported it to her parents, who reported it to the authorities. But that's as far as any evidence goes for now to support this. Now, I just mentioned that because if a light's bright enough to wake you up in the middle of the night, that could be something that supports this UFO and abduction encounter, but at the same time, it also could have just been a car and its headlights. So it's something and nothing.
But aren't they out in the sticks?
They are, which is...
So probably not a lot of traffic at 3 a.m.
Which is why it's quite notable, I think, because they are out in the
definitely
sticks.
aliens. I mean, there's no other explanation.
It had to be chocolate starfish aliens, just...
That's the episode title.
Now, Lynn, so just before we go any further, what do you think of this experience? How does it line up with any other abduction tales that you've heard or we've talked about in the past?
It's just classic in every way, apart from the look of this thing. But yeah, I mean, you know, late in the middle of the night, you've got this creepy octopus-looking freak that shows up, kind of greyish in a way. You got the missing time. Yeah, I mean, it reminds me... I mean, Bob in Bob's Balls, episode number 1, he didn't quite get taken onto the craft.
No.
He's the only man I know to have escaped it. Or maybe he didn't, because he didn't remember where he had been. But yeah, it reminds me of basically every classic alien abduction story I've ever read.
Yeah, it's got all the hallmarks of it here, but it is uniquely odd with the alien design. So,
100%. Like, what is that? I mean, yeah.
Well, I've got a couple of theories about this, but I'll move on to those later on. What happened next was that Yoshi returned home, and he was pretty confused by what had occurred. Was it a dream? He sat there pondering the incident the next night in his home, when suddenly he was struck by a vision. Pain started radiating through his entire body. Aching, he grabbed a pen and began automatic writing in a strange alphabet that he did not recognize. He then heard the voice, and it said to him, telepathically,
"When the disc lands on the mountain, you will come on board by yourself."
And he saw a vision of a mountainous area of where he was to head. And just like that, the voice, the pain, and the vision were gone. Yoshi told 2 friends who were disturbed by his suggestions, but reasoned that the only place that this could possibly be would be the nearby Nikoro Mountain. So naturally, the next night, the trio hiked the 823 meters all the way to the top. Although only Yoshi ascended to the actual summit, he had been told to come alone after all.
He wanted to meet these things again. That's the...
He felt compelled to meet them again.
Oh.
So initially he was terrified, but now compelled. Something was kind of pushing him to do this. And once he arrived, he came across the same UFO with the same squidgy toad boys sat there waiting patiently for him. He said, "Sup," and entered the craft without a fight. What exactly was said to Yoshi by these squidgy toad boys on board has never been revealed. However, they reportedly took him on an 1.5-hour tour of the moon, the Earth, and then circled the latter twice. Yoshi next awoke in the same spot where he'd met the craft, where he was being shook by his two friends who had gone to find him because they were worried about his whereabouts. They took him down the mountain and back home, and Yoshi, after this, was not okay at all. He was bedridden for several days, the experience taking its toll on him. However, with that toll, he found himself imbued with some strange new powers. Linz, if you were an alien, and you might be, we haven't quite eliminated that, but if you were, and you had to bestow a power on a humanoid, what would you give them?
Okay, I'm an alien. Why do I want a human? Probably to do some little Earth missions for me. Maybe I don't know. I guess it would be good if he could read minds. I guess it would be good if he could heal things. I guess it would be good if he could travel more efficiently. Like he could fly. Maybe hover 2 inches from the ground really fast.
All of those things are possibly, in fact, definitely, more useful than what they gave him.
Oh, God.
They gave him, Linz, the
power of stink.
the power to bend spoons.
Oh, for God's sakes, the freaking spoon bending. But we can bend spoons, Chris. People can bend spoons.
Well, I mean,
it's not a power.
Well, I mean, what do you know of spoon bending?
That people just rub them in between their fingers, pretend that they're bending them, when it's probably just a weak spoon that they're just literally bending with their fingers. Like, why? I don't get the spoon bending.
Well, spoon bending was popularized in the 1970s by the Israeli-British future best friend of Michael Jackson, Uri Geller.
I know, and I hate him for it. I hate him for the spoon bending.
It's just bending some spoons. Why you gotta be so angry about it?
Oh, I miss them.
So, Uri Geller appeared on television in the UK mainly at the beginning and performed many feats which were supposedly due to his psychic powers, most famously bending spoons. Now,
God, TV must have been so crap back then. Like that, this guy got any airtime for bending spoons.
To be fair, there's more effort put into bending spoons than Love Island.
I don't know about that, to be honest, because at least they have to build a set.
Well,
Like, he just rocks up with a spoon and goes, rubs it and goes, ooh. Like, who cares?
it's a good gig if you can get it.
I guess, yeah. If you can get paid for bending spoons. But
Now-
still, why are we watching it?
Well, under controlled conditions, Geller was able to reproduce some of his feats, including psychic drawing and restarting broken watches. However, psychologists David Marks and Richard Kamen found that there was very little control in these supposedly controlled experiments.
That's always how it is.
And they have very strong suspicions that Geller was not searched properly upon entry, took advantage of gaps in the walls to allow him to see pictures that he then copied via supposed psychic drawing, and that the researchers may have accidentally left a two-way radio on the wrong setting, allowing Uri to hear all of their conversations.
Oh my gosh, that is like the least control setting ever. Like he literally had a Norman Bates spy hole.
Yeah.
Where he was just copying other people's pictures.
I think there was more control in the LSD dolphin stuff, to be honest.
Yeah, honestly, that looks like a friggin' real scientific operation compared to Yuri Geller with his two-way radio and his Norman Bates hole.
Now, David Mars, one of the skeptic researchers, said of Geller,
Geller has no psychic ability whatsoever. However, I believe him to be a very clever, well-practiced magician.
spoon bending has largely been accepted to be a magic trick rather than a psychic power. And one can easily reproduce it by bending a spoon back and forth, weakening the metal neck. When performing the trick, one holds it by this point where the metal was weakened, applies a little pressure, and it causes the metal to bend. And depending on how the spoon was prepared, it could even break.
Yeah, I mean, it's barely even a magic trick. Like, if I gave you a spoon and said, go and convince someone you can bend these spoons with your mind, you could work that out. You just bend it. And then take it in front of someone and go, ooh.
I know you're doubting right now. But the aliens did not just teach Yoshi a magic trick. That's just the tip of the iceberg. They also gave him the power to communicate telepathically with them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Linz, are you thinking of what I am thinking of?
It's time to take over the world?
Not quite. I'm thinking of a certain reference to a Louis Theroux episode.
Oh my gosh, Corton.
This is central control. This is central control.
If you're listening to this and you don't get that reference, please search up Louis Theroux and Corton.
Oh, I've got a clip I'm going to play in a second, don't worry.
Oh, thank God.
Now, if you haven't been exposed to Louis Theroux, and you should have been if you've listened to our previous episode on Jerusalem Syndrome, Theroux is a British documentary maker who now makes some quite serious documentaries, but he started off with his Weird Weekend series, or that's what's popularised him. The premise of which that he would spend a weekend living amongst various unusual lifestyles, one of which being UFO enthusiasts. And in that episode, he meets the Reverend Robert Short, a man who claims that he could also communicate telepathically with aliens. Let's refresh our memories on what that sounded like.
As a Christmas gift, Reverend Short has offered to use his body as a vessel for his alien friend, Corton.
We were going to have you over here. Is that okay?
No, I have to be sitting in the southeast, Lewis, always.
Corton will share with us the benefit of his extraterrestrial wisdom.
Focus.
Okay.
This is Central Control. This is Central Control. Stand by. Central Control, this is Addy. Central Control, this is Addy. On behalf of the Honorable Corton Representative, we are ready to begin with the information which we have for these individuals in this time period. Let us begin with the individual who's to the left forefront of the instrument.
So we can only hope that Yoshi sounded something like this, but in Japanese, of course.
Oh God, I hope so.
Now, anyway, the aliens called Yoshi again on his telepathic mind phone and asked him if he'd like to go bowling with them. And he accepted.
No!
No.
Oh, thank God.
I'm kidding.
I was like, please, no.
Hey, Yoshi, let's go bowling. No, they did invite him on another intergalactic sojourn. This time, the aliens took him willingly on this intergalactic tour, first to Jupiter, next to Saturn, and then finally made a pit stop on one of Saturn's moons, Titan. One of his...
Pretty nice trip.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? And there, one of his hosts popped out for a moment or two before returning with a rock. An actual Titan rock, which it gifted to Yoshi as a souvenir. They then dropped him back off at his home, and that was the last space journey he had with them. However, in the wake of the return, Yoshi would go all in and claim that he'd not only gained the ability to teleport to faraway stars in just 6 minutes, he also used this power to protect the Earth from natural disasters. Aided in this, he was gifted not 1, not 2, but 3 brand spanking new UFOs that he keeps parked hidden in the Hidaka mountain range, which is where I used to live, actually. Now, I never saw a UFO parked up anywhere, sadly, but he claims that he uses these UFOs to travel inside of the Earth, which is obviously hollow, and blocks up the passages of volcanoes with large boulders, therefore preventing eruptions.
Now the powers are making more sense, and aliens giving you some powers and the resources to protect the world. But there's still been natural disasters ever since. So I don't know if Yoshi's sleeping a lot.
Well, I can hear you. Perhaps you're doubting Yoshi, but...
Perhaps, maybe just a little bit. I mean, the Earth is hollow. We all know that. That's where Hitler lives. And, yeah, but come on. What the heck?
But do you remember that Titan rock?
Yeah, I was going to say, he better have that rock, and I hope it was tested, and I hope they were like, we've never seen anything like it.
Well, have a look at this image and describe it to me. What is it?
Is that a Q-tip?
I believe that's a matchstick.
Oh, I thought it was an ear-cleaning Q-tip. Okay, that's a matchstick, so it is a very, very tiny black shard of... Well, I mean, it could be a rock, but it could be like, I don't know. It doesn't, it's a very terrible picture. It looks like a photocopy of a matchstick and a shard of something, to be honest.
Well, I mean, he was very proud of this rock because it was the evidence that he could show to people that all of this actually happened, because he didn't...
I bet they were really convinced when they saw that.
Well, he didn't want to show them the UFOs, so he showed them the rock. And scientists at the local Kitami Engineering University actually took the rock and analysed it. And they found that it came from Titan.
What?
If Titan was the name of the cave just down the road. And it isn't. So... this was...
Sorry. Really got me. He's so crazy.
So basically what he did was he went down the road and chipped off a bit of a stalactite and claimed it was from Titan.
Oh, come on.
Now, so sadly it appears that one of two things was happening here. Either Yoshi was making this whole thing up, or these jellyfish aliens sent him a message to meet them for a date, took him on a lovely whirlwind tour around the known universe, landed on Titan, and retrieved a rock. A rock that they had planted there earlier in the day just to mess with Yoshi in some kind of universal funniest home videos type scenario.
I mean, that was one of my thoughts. I was like, they could just be like fucking with him because they saw him, like he saw them and they were like, oh, for God's sakes, and they're like, let's just screw with him.
Yeah, some kind of intergalactic Beatles about.
Yeah.
It's just a prank, bro. So, Linz, what do you make of the rock? Do you smell what it's cooking?
Chris. You are so ridiculous. I am not impressed by that rock. As a person who has many strange rocks, yes, I do. This is most unimpressive.
Well, how about
There's probably not even a fossil in that one, It's just a shard. A lonely Japanese cave shard.
Yeah,
Try harder, Yoshi. This is bullshit.
Well, what about his reported possession of 3 UFOs and his Captain Planet-esque role in protecting us all?
I mean, now, those I'd like to see. But, seeing as he's probably, well, I'm guessing he probably hasn't shown anyone his UFOs in the Hollow Earth, and also there's still been natural disasters. So
He's slacking a little bit, isn't he?
Terrible job. I mean, they could have abducted anyone else, really.
And also, I'm not really sure if that's how pressure works. Really, I mean, if you block up if you block up one volcano, is it not just going to shoot out of another volcano?
It's going to come from somewhere.
So, I mean, obviously, this seems fairly silly and fairly open and shut. So, why did I fuse this? Why did I want to talk about it?
Because it's hilarious.
Correct answer. However, also, the most interesting thing about the case, putting Yoshi's claims of being a one-man Earth Defense Force to one side, is the aliens themselves. And normally, during these claims of encounter, we're presented with a classic grey, maybe a reptilian, or a human-like alien such as the Nordics. Jelly-filled starfish, while admittedly quite delicious sounding, are far from the norm.
You freak.
Now, I genuinely cannot recall another case with aliens like this in the files, which leads me to a couple of hypotheses here. So either Yoshi really was abducted, and this was potentially the only real case of an alien abduction ever, and they happened to be made out of jelly and look like toad starfish, or this was a unique interpretation by Yoshi, perhaps informed by differing cultural reference points, and he simply made it all up. Although, we have to be honest, it's rarely as simple as somebody just making something up. They often truly believe what they're talking about for one reason or another. And you referenced Robert Taylor before, Bob's Balls, and the episode that we covered, our very first episode, that's kind of, I would say, almost become our mascot all the way through this. And, you know, one of the leading theories there was that Bob had a temporal lobe event, which was behind the claims of the floating balls that supposedly attacked him. So I don't think Yoshi's lying. I don't think he thinks he's lying. But I also don't think that he's telling the truth.
No, not at all. I think it sounds like a fantastic dream that was probably a lot more interesting than whatever he's doing out in the woods by himself. And he probably just thought, I'm going to go with this. I mean, I want to be someone. I had a weird dream. It feels real to me. Now I'm going to go. Maybe it was a series of dreams that he had over the course. But then he went with his friend. I mean, he went with his friends to the mountain, and then he just hid for an hour and a half. Let's be honest.
Yeah. I mean, where they found him, he was in the same place that they left him, more or less, at the top of the summit. Just he was passed out. Yeah.
Which you can pretend to do. I mean, you just lay down and close your eyes and go, oh my gosh, like, where did you guys come from?
Yeah. It takes a lot to get to this point, though, doesn't it? I mean, somebody has to... I mean, imagine if you just, like, started roping your friends. It's one thing to lie. You know, we've talked about cases where people, it may have been children who are making something up and they're concocting a story before. But for this... You know, he's involving people. He's getting them to climb mountains in the middle of the night. I mean, that's a hell of a lot of effort to go to just to make something up.
It's not a lot of effort for him because all he has to do is go to 3 friends and say, "Hey, come up this mountain with me. There's a UFO coming to get me." And they, probably out of genuine curiosity, which is what I would also do, but with a microphone, is just followed him up to have a look. Mm-hmm. And probably worried about him, like, I don't think Yoshi's okay. He's been talking about rocks and jellyfish and stuff. We should probably go with him so he doesn't get eaten by that bear that bites the heads off children.
Now, Yoshi's story kind of comes to an end here. It's where the information kind of peters out online. And you know, I'd like to reference a couple of things such as Cryptopia and ufology, along with Mysterious Universe, that really filled in a lot of the gaps here. So there is more reading out there to be done. But Yoshi's story kind of just peters out. He seemingly continues to claim that he's still in contact with the aliens and that he's some kind of spokesman for something called SAMCALL, which is the Summon Call Space Union. So he's their official representative on Earth, apparently. There's not a whole lot of information as to what happened to him now, then where he is now. I've tried to do some research, haven't come up with too much, but if you do know the whereabouts of Yoshi, please let us know. We'd love to hear your feedback. Obviously, we're fairly sure that this case is a hoax.
We're fairly sure.
Fairly sure.
Says Chris.
But those aliens are deliciously interesting.
They do sound like cookies. Like, I can imagine having like a cookie cutter shape of that picture. When you see it on the Instagram, you'll know you'll know what we're talking about. There's something delicious about them now that you've mentioned it multiple times. Maybe I'm just going along with you like a brainwashing thing. But...
So that brings us to the end of today's episode. Linz, any final thoughts?
I'm going to be thinking about this for days, and I'm definitely going to look it up after we end this episode. I'm definitely going to be looking into this. I wanted to know, though, is there any, like, newspaper articles about this? Like, or anything, like, on Japanese, like, TV, like, covering it?
There was a manga published about it, or at least a...
You are kidding me. You're just mentioning this now.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was at least a one-page panel in there that sort of illustrates things. It's got a very, very typical Japanese portrayal of a young man looking extremely excited as he's being abducted, and followed the diagram of the UFOs. So it seems that there was a small amount of fame that came with this, but I mean really small. He's not a famous figure in Japan. I actually asked a couple of my friends that live in the Kitami area if they had ever heard of this, and they responded, no. What?
That's sad. Like, they should have done like the Gustav Carlson thing, where he builds a monument on that mountain, and then it gets sort of like put on Atlas Obscura, so people who are in the area will know of the story. He really slipped up on like advertising his experience.
Yeah. I mean, the only other thing that's really to mention is that there has been some UFO researchers, primarily Ninchi Arai, who has offered some evidence that there were reported sightings of strange lights in the skies in the Kitami area on the dates that corroborate with what happened to Yoshihiro Fujiwara. However, that doesn't mean too much. There's reports of strange lights all the time. There's not a huge amount of evidence here. Of all of our cases that we've done, I think just because of these jelly babies, I really want them to be true.
Just because of these jelly babies.
Linz, any final thoughts before we close out today's episode?
No, just that this is amazing. And now when I think of aliens, it's not just the reptilians, the greys and the Nordics that come to mind. It's the stinky jelly toads. And I love that. I just love that. It's just going to be the first thing I think of whenever anyone talks about anything alien related.
And if you...
So thank you for sharing this story with us, Chris.
You are very welcome. If you want to see those stinky jelly toads for yourself, please go over to our Instagram page where you can see Yoshi's amazing drawing of them. And you can find that at d.s.radio on Instagram.
And yeah, if you have any suggestions, or if you know of any cases with similar stinky jelly toad starfish things, and we haven't heard of them and you want to tell us about them, please do. Or just any cases with really weird alien descriptions for us to cover, that would be really good.
Yeah, they're super interesting when they're different.
Yeah,
because,
exactly.
I mean, whilst it helps to mount up the evidence of when it's greys or reptilians or whatever, it becomes a bit samey, and we want to hear some weird ones. And you know, there's I mean, in that pack, there's some truly bizarre ones. Sam the Sandown Ghost Clown.
You know, I'm sure somebody asked us to cover that, and I was looking into it. Yeah, there's some really weird ones in that pack, which is why I bought. Oh, do you remember the seller and where to buy them, actually, so people can...
It was on, and we are not sponsored by them, but please give us money if you are the seller. So it was on Etsy. And the seller's name is Gazoo Trumps. They make all kinds of different top trump cards for different things by the looks of things.
The illustrations are amazing as well. Like, they're so cool.
They're absolutely excellent. I really recommend it. It's a really good thing. And we're going to have to play this. We're actually going to have to play this with each other.
Patreon.
Thank you very much for listening to today's episode. We'll see you again in 2 weeks' time when it's going to be one of Linz's stories.
Yeah, and we'll be getting spooky. So expect something paranormal with a little bit of history.
We are going into spooky season as well. So you can expect over the next month or so, as we go to Halloween, a couple of spooky things from us, to say the least.
Oh, I'm going full on creepy, so look forward to that.
So thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Dystopian Simulation Radio.
Bye.
Bye.